Hey there. So let's talk about the housing market in Washington. I know a lot of folks think it's pretty much solid, especially with all the tech money around from companies like Amazon and Microsoft. It seems like prices just keep going up, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that's not the case. Home prices can and will drop, and believe me, it'll be a pretty big fall. Here's some interesting info. Home prices in Washington only went up by 0.4% over the last year, while the number of homes sold dropped by 4.5%. And guess what? Homes for sale shot up by 21.6%. Now, before you jump in to say that's not possible, remember what happened with Florida condos back in 2007? Everyone thought they were safe until they weren't. The market in 2026 is set to surprise quite a few people, and I really don't want you to be caught off guard. I totally get it. Many of you have been saving up for a while, watching prices soar while your salaries barely keep pace. Some of you even stretched your budgets to grab a home, thinking you snagged a good deal for the future. I've felt that frustration myself. I'm making this video not to scare anyone, but to get you ready for what's coming. Take Seattle, for instance. Homes listed in the city have skyrocketed by 30 to 40% year over year, but median prices, they're hardly moving at all. That's why I want you to hit that like button if you're hoping for some sense to return to housing in Washington. Now let's unveil the 10 cities in Washington that are ticking time bombs for home prices. First up at number 10 is Spokane. Poor Spokane thought it could compete with Seattle without the same job market. Home prices have gone up an astonishing 67% since 2020. Last year, the median price hit $425,000, but the average household income is still around $62,000. Do the math on that mortgage. That's about $3,200 a month with current rates, and families are pulling in around $4,100 after taxes. How are they supposed to manage that? Spokane was banking on remote workers moving in from Seattle, but now with return to office mandates, companies like Amazon and Microsoft want their employees back in the office. Those tech investors from California who bought homes without even seeing them, they're about to unload those properties quicker than you can say property tax bill. On top of that, Spokane has 14,000 new housing units in the works right now, and the city's population growth has just slowed to a mere 0.3%. Hey everyone, I want to chat about the real estate situation in Washington, especially how some cities are really getting ahead of themselves. First up is Bellingham, which has managed to price itself into an unrealistic dream world. You'd think it's a great escape from Seattle, but with median home prices around $670,000 for places that should be half that, it's hard to see how that makes sense. The draw of Western Washington University sounds nice, but students can't even afford to rent studios for $2,300 to $1,700 nearby. And those parents, they're definitely not rushing to buy investment properties at those crazy prices anymore. Besides the university, the main jobs in town come from healthcare and retail, which isn't exactly thrilling. The prices are all vibe with no solid job market to back it up. Plus, insurance costs are shooting up fast, and living in a spot prone to landslides doesn't help your peace of mind. Imagine shelling out $680,000 for a house and then facing property taxes averaging over $8,000 with insurance bills constantly rising, all for a job managing at Trader Joe's? Honestly, does that make any sense? And sure, you're close to Canada, but is that really worth a $200,000 price tag? Now, moving on to Tacoma, the city that tried so hard to be Seattle's cooler little sibling, but honestly ended up just being its storage unit. The waterfront is beautiful, and the Stadium District has its charm, but that's where the compliments stop. Tacoma's home prices are based on everyone wanting to still commute to Seattle, but guess what? People are over it. The Port of Tacoma, their biggest economic player, just announced some automation plans that are set to cut 30% of jobs by 2026. That's 4,500 families that won't be buying houses anytime soon. Meanwhile, developers kept building, expecting the growth to keep soaring. 8,000 new units, just in case. The median price hit $515,000 for homes that, let's be real, should be way cheaper. What a wild ride. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's really hard to believe anyone would pay $180,000 for a home in a place like Tacoma when you think about it. And the smell? Well, it used to be pretty bad. But now it's the overwhelming stench of over-leveraged mortgages that's the issue. I truly feel for those families who thought they were making a smart move by avoiding the high prices in Seattle, but still staying close enough to benefit from the job market. If you want to keep up with this unfolding mess, hit that subscribe button because once those layoffs in Seattle hit hard, Tacoma is definitely going to feel the impact even more. The crime rate has already surged by 23%, and that's before any economic downturn kicks in. Picture this. You're spending $500,000 to live somewhere that practically begs for a Ring doorbell camera on every corner. And speaking of cities living in the shadow of others, Tacoma isn't the only one struggling. If you head a bit south, you'll find Vancouver, Washington, which seems to be just trailing along behind Portland as it heads toward a cliff. Yeah, we're talking about Washington's Vancouver, the place that seems to exist purely so residents can dodge Oregon's income tax while still shopping in tax-free Oregon stores. Pretty clever, right? Until you realize you're dealing with Washington property prices for what, a daily 3-hour traffic jam on I-5. Here's something that no one is mentioning. The Intel manufacturing facility across the river is looking to downsize, which could mean losing around 8,000 jobs. And Amazon's warehouse, the second biggest employer in Vancouver, is cutting back on shifts too. Yet, somehow the median home prices are still stuck at $500,000 there. Just to be clear, this isn't Vancouver, BC, where at least you get universal health care. No, this is Vancouver, Washington, where the main draw seems to be how close you are to Portland. Seriously, that's just a location description, not a feature. Oh, and get this. Property taxes just shot up by 18% to pay for infrastructure that really should have been sorted out 2 decades ago. You're basically paying today's prices for the mistakes made in planning years back. You've got these new neighborhoods with adorable names like Cascade Meadows and Harmony Heights, but guess what? They're built on floodplains. Yup, climate change is making an appearance, bringing along those atmospheric rivers. Your insurance company is well aware of this too, which is why premiums spiked by 40% last year. And if you think taxes and traffic are the worst part, let's chat about the state capitol. When the entire economy relies on government jobs, it doesn't take much, like one budget cut, to bring everything crashing down. Number 6 on my list is Olympia, the capital where the biggest industry is being the state capital. Can you believe it? A full 30% of the jobs here are government jobs, and guess what happens next? Olympia had this idea that it could charge Seattle-style prices while offering amenities that just don't match up. The median home price there shot up to $520,000. Now, mind you, this is Olympia, the place where the nightlife is pretty much done by 8 p.m., and you've got a couple of brew pubs and a suspicious number of teriyaki joints in the restaurant scene. But here's where it gets tough. State budget projections are suggesting a $4 billion shortfall is on the way. That's going to mean hiring freezes and layoffs, leaving a lot of government workers realizing that their $520,000 mortgages were based on job security that might just vanish. Evergreen State College has around 2,100 undergraduates, most of whom are living off campus. So, yeah, it does play a role in Olympia's rental market, but not like a major university would. And when enrollment trends start to wobble, you can bet the local housing market will feel the pinch pretty quickly. With remote work policies and those looming budget cuts, this market is about to see what happens when your whole economy relies on tax revenue from places that are also crumbling. Now, let me know in the comments if you think government job security is just a myth by 2025, because Olympia is definitely going to be a prime example of that. And it's not just a little city feeling the squeeze. Even the tech giants of Washington are about to face the music. Let's talk about Redmond, home sweet home for Microsoft, where the cracks are really starting to show. We're talking about the number 5 spot, Redmond. You might be thinking, but Redmond has Microsoft. True, but remember, Detroit had General Motors. How did that pan out? Microsoft recently laid off 10,000 people, and they're not finished yet. The era of Microsoft dominance seems to be coming to an end, and I'm not just talking about a video game here. Currently, the average home value in Redmond is around $137 million, which has barely budged, only up about 1.4% in the last year. But here's the kicker. Redfin says the median sale price fell by 6.2% year over year to around $115 million, and homes are hanging out on the market for 28 days. For a city that's expecting a $1 million price tag, that doesn't scream demand. So what's really going on? Microsoft is shifting towards hiring contractors now. And guess what? Contractors typically don't buy million-dollar homes. They rent apartments for the duration of their 6-month contracts instead. The whole real estate game in Redmond relied on endless Microsoft growth. But now we're seeing a wave of contract workers who have no intention of shelling out $8,000 a month for a 3-bedroom house that's a 40-minute drive from anything fun. And that new light rail station they were counting on to fix everything? Spoiler alert, it didn't. It's pretty wild how easy it's become for people to just pick up and leave. All those fancy condos popping up everywhere, they're sitting around 40% empty because who wants to fork over $4,500 a month just to live above a Panera Bread? Seriously. If you think it's crazy how tech companies have messed up their own towns, give this video a thumbs up because Redmond is about to find out what happens when the company stops caring about its community. But hey, Redmond isn't the only one in this boat. Take Kirkland, for example. This place used to have such charm, but now they're charging a whopping $1.3 million for houses that are basically on the front lines of winter flooding. I'm not kidding. Just Google Juanita Beach flooding. People are still convinced that living near the water is worth all that cash, even as the water threatens to mess up their foundations. With Google scaling back its Kirkland campus and local shops closing down because rents are sky high, like $75 per square foot, which is just nuts for Kirkland, that charm is fading fast. Oh, and those property taxes? Average around $18,000 a year? That's for services that sometimes include good schools. I mean, I guess the schools are decent since only wealthy folks can afford to live there, creating this cycle that's bound to crash. Once those tech job cuts ramp up, just watch how quickly the great schools chatter turns into a budget crisis. The city thought it could just keep building, approving 5,000 new units, assuming growth would keep rolling in. Spoiler alert, it won't. Get ready for those emergency assessment taxes for infrastructure. That view you shelled out an extra $300,000 for. Get used to looking at construction for the next decade. And remember that beloved waterfront trail, one major storm away from becoming a real underwater issue. Speaking of waterfront access, let's talk Bainbridge Island. This place is where Seattle millionaires like to pretend they're living a quaint island life while dishing out about $2.8 million for what they call a cottage. But the whole ferry situation is a real kicker. You'd think the ferry dependents would knock these prices down a peg, but instead, it's become a quirky selling point. Just wait until you miss your boat. It turns into a 2-hour commute. And here's a reality check. Washington State ferries are practically crumbling. They're only running at 60% capacity now, with breakdowns happening all the time, and they just announced service cuts. Your property's value relies on a ferry system that barely works. Crazy, right? Imagine paying $3 million to live somewhere that feels like it's held together by duct tape and wishes. If you're cozying up on Bainbridge Island, I hope you've got a boat waiting for you because that ferry situation is about to get a lot trickier before it gets any better. The average age of folks on Bainbridge is climbing to 47. You know what happens when a place gets older and young families can't buy in? Boom. The tax base shrinks, services start to crumble, and that cute island town you love turns into just a memory. Those fancy waterfront homes going for $5 million, good luck finding buyers when there's only a ferry running twice a day. Seriously, if you're curious about this slow-motion train wreck, hit that subscribe button. Bainbridge is in for a rude awakening about what islands are really meant for. Sunny getaways, not investment dreams. Now, let's hop over to Bellevue, which was once the shining star of the East Side. However, take a closer look inside those glass towers, and you'll see the reality behind the glamour. Bellevue, where they've knocked down all the character to make room for glass boxes catering to Amazon. The average home price sits at a whopping $1.6 million, $1.5 million, just to say you live in a city that feels like a spreadsheet. It's what you get when you let AI plan a city. Sure, it functions, but it's about as lively as a piece of toast. The downtown area, all chains and corporate parks, but culture? What culture? And get this, Amazon's return to office chatter is kind of funny since half their Bellevue team has already packed up for Austin. Those luxury high-rises, they're sitting with a 35% vacancy rate. The rental market is about to find out what happens when you make everything so pricey that only techies can afford it. Then the techies decide to leave. Bellevue Square Mall, which used to be the heart of the city, is losing anchor stores faster than we can say online shopping. But wait, there's more. They poured billions into the East Side Light Rail, and guess what? It's actually increasing crime in those areas. Property crimes have jumped up by 45% near the stations. So, if you bought that $1.6 million home thinking you were safe in Bellevue, brace yourself for some new crime stats right on your doorstep. And what's the city council's big idea? More luxury developments because that's the answer to a pricing crisis. Build even more expensive stuff that no one can afford. What do you all think about this? Comment below. All right, here's the scoop on what's happening in some neighborhoods around Seattle and other cities in Washington. I've been diving into the question of whether it's the mass departure of tech workers or the loss of community that's going to hit Bellevue the hardest. It's a close race, but it's all making waves. Let's zoom in on Seattle, not the entire city, but some neighborhoods that really skyrocketed in prices. Capitol Hill, for instance. Can you believe a one-bedroom condo there is going for $750,000, and it comes with the added bonus of street camping? Then there's Ballard, where you're shelling out $1.2 million just to live over a brewery that's closing up at 9 p.m. Fremont claims to have that quirky vibe, but is asking for Manhattan prices for places that feel like they belong in Burlington. Seattle itself has about 30,000 empty units. Yes, you heard that right, 30,000. Yet prices keep rising because, well, it's Seattle. But that's just a wild illusion. The downtown area is only half full with office spaces, and major companies are making remote work a permanent thing. Remember when the conference center was a reason for all that hotel and condo development? Now it's struggling with just 30% of pre-pandemic bookings. What really gets me is thinking about families who bought homes between 2021 and 2022, believing they were securing their futures. The truth is, they might just be securing a future of being house poor in a city that's slowly wearing down. Property crimes are up. Property taxes are climbing. Yet property values are about to face a reality check, especially when companies like Amazon realize they don't need 60,000 employees in Seattle, and Boeing has already packed up and left. The tax base is on the decline, and the issues just keep multiplying. What does Seattle's city council do? They decide to hit the remaining residents with higher taxes. The overpriced neighborhoods in Seattle aren't just getting inflated prices, they reflect a reality that's fading fast. A reality where living near downtown was a must, fueled by endless tech money. So here we are, with 10 cities in Washington bracing for a hard reality check, much like a freshman who learns their philosophy degree doesn't pay the bills. If you've got property in these areas, it might be time to think about selling to some Californian who hasn't caught on yet. And if you're in the market to buy, I'd suggest holding off for a bit. Seriously, just wait. What do you think? Which city will feel the crash first? Any surprises on the horizon with values holding up? Drop your predictions. If you think I'm off base about your city, I'd really like to hear from you. It's always interesting to get feedback from folks who just spent their life savings on a 2-bedroom in Tacoma. If this video helps you avoid a big mistake, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe too, because I'm keeping an eye on this housing situation as it unfolds. Just to clarify, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy a home in Washington. I'm just suggesting that you steer clear of certain areas at the current prices in this economy. You can click on another video on your screen to learn more about the real estate market.